Carlos Castaneda's legacy. The power of man is unlimited, and death only exists because we intend to die from the moment we are born. The intent of death can be stopped by changing the position of the Assemblish Point. Carlos Castaneda. Tales of power are legends which are unrealized in our lives, but for each of us, there is always a chance to bring them into action. Then, any legend can become a real part of our life. Everything that we show in this movie, take it as a fairy tale about the power that can be realized and open the doors to the world of the shamans of ancient Mexico. We reserve the right of the viewer to influence their life with this information or to remain an uninvolved spectator. In any case, when you watch this movie, your Assemblish Point will move. The unknown is what is hidden from man by a kind of veil of the fabric of existence that has a terrifying texture. However, it is within reach. At a certain point in time, the unknown becomes known. The unknowable is something that defies neither comprehension. The unknowable will never be known. Nevertheless, it is always somewhere nearby. It captures and delights its magnificence, and at the same time, its grandeur and boundlessness plunges into mortal horror. Carlos Castaneda. This movie is based on the real experience of people who reproduce techniques from the books of Carlos Castaneda. He is still the most enigmatic mystic writer of the 20th century. His books have stirred the minds and consciousness of millions of people around the world. They have given rise to dozens of famous Hollywood movies, a variety of esoteric trends and techniques to influence the mind. Hundreds of authors were inspired to write something similar, but none of them were able to repeat a similar magical journey. During the reading, a powerful effect is created by the presence of Don Juan, the Nagwal, and the teacher of Castaneda. With each subsequent book, the reader experiences a spontaneous expansion of consciousness, a feeling of the disclosure of a certain magical power which make you look at your life in a new way. Man has four enemies: fear, clarity, power, and old age. Fear, clarity, and power can be overcome, but not old age. This is the cruelest enemy which cannot be defeated. You can only delay your defeat. Carlos Castaneda. The first book, The Teachings of Don Juan, was published in 1968 and immediately shocked readers with its mystical influence and consciousness. Acquaintance with Don Juan, a warrior shaman of ancient Mexico, amazed readers in the first book. The brightness of his personality was conveyed directly through the text, and from the very first lines, readers are immersed into the world of magic of ancient Mexico, experiencing the personal experience of Castaneda and his interaction with the shaman warriors of ancient Mexico, as they called themselves. The warrior knows that he is waiting and knows what he is waiting for. And when he waits, he has no desires, and therefore, no matter how little he gets, it is always more than he can take. If he is hungry, he will cope with it, because he does not suffer from hunger. If he is wounded, then he copes with this because he does not suffer from pain. Being hungry or suffering from pain means that a person is not a warrior, and the force of hunger or pain can destroy him. Carlos Castaneda. Separate Reality is the second book, which was filled with voluminous stories about Castaneda's psychedelic experience. Plants of power, smoke, diablero, all this bursts into the mind of the reader. Information and stories in the second book bypass the system of protection and logic. Most people took it literally. After reading Separate Reality, the readers were divided into two parts. Those who had enough personal strength were able to realize and apply in their experience the practices and knowledge of Castaneda. Other readers immediately embarked on fatal experiments on themselves, believing that drug use is the magic of Castaneda, which served as a trap, and in the end changed their psyche in the wrong direction. They never continued reading the rest of the books, in which Castaneda's teacher, the warrior sorcerer Don Juan, revealed the essence of the use of psychotropic substances at the beginning of the path of learning magic. He explained in detail that they were not needed by a real sorcerer and were used in special cases, and in the case of Castaneda, they were simply necessary. Obviously, the first two books act as a filter, which filters out incapable people, and if a person has little personal power, will, and desire to learn, the information will be perceived distorted, and the world of magic will be inaccessible. Those who have not passed beyond the third book slide into illusions and blocking skepticism. No one knows for sure whether this was the calculation of the sorcerer Nagwal Don Juan, or was it just a coincidence. In narrow circles, there is a popular saying, Castaneda is not as terrible as his followers. That is why a huge army of opponents and critics of Castaneda appeared. These people simply did not pass the filter and could not realize the full depth of the information. Some went into dogmatics, claiming that this is black magic, and some have become entrenched in denial, childishly demonstrating their inability to accept new experiences. Sorcerer warriors will never be able to build a bridge to connect with the people of the world. But if people want to do it, they will have to build a bridge that will connect them with the sorcerer warriors. Carlos Castaneda. But if you consider the practical application of the knowledge described in Castaneda's books, you can get concrete results and create a direct impact on your life and the outside world. It is these moments that we will analyze in this movie. Assemblish Point is one of the most important terms for describing the world of sorcerers. Don Juan, Castaneda's teacher, often relied on the concept of the Assemblish Point, and even talked about practical methods of moving it. He said that every living being has a so-called assemblage point, which is located in an energy cocoon, a luminous shell around the physical body. An ordinary person does not see a cocoon, and skeptics deny its existence. The shamans of ancient Mexico claimed that with the help of certain techniques, you can see this energy cocoon and even the assemblage point that is located in it. A person has the assemblage point behind the right shoulder blade at arm's length, and when it shifts, the perception changes. Shamans of ancient Mexico saw the assemblage point on the cocoon and could move it with the help of conation, psychotropic substances, and even a blow on the back. This was often mentioned by Castaneda when he went into a state of heightened consciousness. This always happened after Don Juan made light blows to his back. Any shift in the assemblish point means moving away from the excessive preoccupation with one's individuality, which is a hallmark of modern man. Shamans believe that the position of the assemblish point is the reason for the murderous selfishness of modern man, completely absorbed in his self-image. Having lost hope of ever returning to the source of everything, man sought comfort in his personality. While doing this, he succeeded in fixing his assemblish point in a strictly defined position, thereby perpetuating his image of himself. So we can say with confidence that any movement of the assemblish point from its unusual position leads a person in one way or another to get rid of self-reflection and the accompanying feeling of self-importance, said Don Juan. The displacement of the assemblish point occurs constantly. For example, when we fall asleep, it shifts to the position of dreams. We can see fragments of dreams and images, be aware of a dream, or do not remember anything at all. According to Don Juan, in a dream, the assemblish point is not fixed and floats in certain range. If a person manages to fix the assemblish point in a dream, then a lucid dream occurs, and this is an important part of training in Don Juan's magic. Many of his students lived consciously in dreams, could travel to other worlds, and learn new skills there. It is written in great detail in the book The Art of Dreaming. Then Castaneda asked, will the body or the brain naturally not fix the assemblish point during sleep? Don Juan replied, not if it's a natural, that is, a normal dream. But in our case, we're not talking about normal dreams. We're talking about dreaming. And the dreamer, having overcome the first gates of dreaming, has attained the awareness of the energetic body. And it's the energy body that passes through the second gate of the dreaming, jumping from one dream to another. Carlos Castaneda. Most of the schools and lucid dreaming teachers that are on the internet today originated from the books of Castaneda. Similar information and techniques are available in the eastern direction of Yoga Nidra, which allows you to turn on consciousness in a dream and leave the physical body. But it was Castaneda who was able to reveal the topic in as much detail as possible, because his methods and knowledge can be applied in everyday life. We should explain that the principle of Don Juan's sorcery is different from the usual ritual magic that you have seen on TV screens and stage shows. The Mexican shamans had a completely different approach and attitude to sorcery, as Don Juan spoke about more than once. They acted pragmatically and effectively. Nowadays, their actions can be explained scientifically, and some famous teachers have been able to apply Castaneda's techniques to achieve their personal goals. The main obstacle for a warrior, it is internal dialogue. This is the key to everything. When the warrior learns to stop it, everything becomes possible. The most incredible projects become doable. Carlos Castaneda. The assemblish point of an ordinary person is fixed by his beliefs, internal dialogue, habits, and attachments. This is a state familiar to all of us, a combination of sensations and confidence that the world is exactly the way we imagine it. The fact is that with age, strong neural connections are formed in the brain, a unique microflora and hormonal background. Based on this, the psyche and emotions will respond according to the parameters of the body chemistry. As a result, we perceive the world in a narrow framework formed by the body, psyche, thoughts, and past experiences. This is a rigid fixation of the assemblage point, and Don Juan gave knowledge and techniques for displacing the assemblage point and argued that it was quite possible. To displace the assemblage point, we must start doing something new and abandon the usual. For example, to start tying the shoelaces with the left foot, if it was customary to tie them on the right, to walk backwards, in general, to do everything on purpose differently and consciously. Don Juan sorcerers could sleep in trees, hang upside down, and make lists of their habits and actions in order to see the structure of their ego. After that, they gradually took to piece their ego apart, learned to do exactly what is not included in the list of the usual. Therefore, in the books of Castaneda, there are unusual techniques and methods that have been called not doing on the personal self. After all, the personal self is the same ego structure that we discussed in the previous movie. In yogic scriptures, there are many similar methods for changing the structure of the separate self. All of this has one goal: the displacement of the assemblage point according to Castaneda, and the ability to see the world as it is, outside the framework of conditioned perception. The shamans of ancient Mexico went their own way to the awakening of consciousness. They wrote lists of their habits, created new ones as opposed to the old ones, and did everything possible to move their assemblage point from its usual position. Over time, they learned to change their consciousness by an effort of will, as well as to shift the assemblage point of other people. This is exactly what Don Juan did with Castaneda throughout the entire period of his teachings. The ability to shift your assemblage point is an important skill on the path to higher consciousness. In other words, it is the ability to rearrange neural connections in the brain through conscious actions. The next stage of training, the sorcerer, is fixing the assemblage point in the desired position. For ease of understanding, let's explain this using the example of children. Their assemblage point is constantly floating. It is easily mobile, and this is evident from how the child's attention works. It cannot be in focus. The child switches very quickly. He just cried and already laughs, saw a toy, and immediately got distracted from the current process. Over time, the assemblage point of children is fixed in one position, so a person is formed with the full package of his beliefs. The older the person, the more difficult it is for him to move the assemblage point. That is why Don Juan gave Castaneda the psychotropic plants at the beginning of his training. Castaneda's perception was so strongly fixed that the warrior sorcerer could not displace it without extreme methods of using hallucinogens. Fixating the assemblage point in a new position is a creation of a new skill or a new way of communication. Changes in the microflora of the body, ideology, perception, and consciousness. When all beliefs no longer work, a person matures and his assemblage point moves smoothly. The most interesting thing is that the shamans of ancient Mexico learned many positions of the assemblage point. They could move and fix them in different positions. It's like in 2-3 minutes, you can get a completely new skill, start communicating in an unfamiliar language, or get behind the wheel of a car for the first time and drive like a professional. In everyday life, almost every person has a displacement of the assemblage point through the use of alcohol, drugs, love relationship, stress, and physical overload. All of these shift perceptions and instantly affect the quality of life. The only problem is that people don't know how to consciously shift their assemblish point and fix it in a new position. Therefore, many stories from people's lives may seem funny and ridiculous because it is obvious that the assemblish point of most people is manipulated by society, stereotypes, and dogmas. In order to master the art of displacing the assemblish point, you need to remove the fixators. One of the effective methods is the practice of energy breathing, meditation, and other techniques for stopping the internal dialogue. As a result, there is a change in the chemical processes in the body, a shift in the hormonal background, and this greatly affects perception. Old patterns of behavior cease to influence the current moment, and perception is freed from rigid stereotypes. At this moment, a huge amount of energy in the body is released and access to the unknown is open. We are constantly talking to ourselves about our world. In fact, we create our world with our internal dialogue. When we stop talking to ourselves, the world becomes as it should be. We renew it, we give it life, and we support it with our internal dialogue. And not only this, we also choose our pathways according to what we tell ourselves. So we repeat the same choice over and over until we die. Because we are continuing the same internal dialogue, the warrior is aware of this and seeks to end his internal dialogue. Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan, the main character in Castaneda's books, often spoke of this. Stopping the internal dialogue is the key to sorcery, removing the fixation of perception. This was one of the discoveries of the shamans, but they went even further. By stopping the internal dialogue, they have learned to do incredible things that for many will be a tale of power. Through lucid dreaming, they created energy doubles, a copy of the physical body, and could be in two places at the same time. Don Juan once told Castaneda that he interacted with him several times through a double and not physically. These words shocked Castaneda immediately, but then he realized that for the sorcerers of the Nagwal's inner circle, this was a common thing. Learning a foreign language is also a displacement of the assemblish point, because it expands the perception of the description of the world. The miracle that we already used to is fixation, and any new skill will be a displacement and a fixation of the assemblish point in a new position. A child who gradually develops, learns to speak and think, reads the states of his parents and those who interact with him, gradually fixating his assemblish point in a unique position. In adulthood, the assemblish point is rigidly fixed and moves only in a dream, or during severe shocks from alcohol, or while learning new skills in life. That is why you need to constantly learn something new right up to your death. Tonal and Nagwal are important terms from the sorcerer's world that are often mentioned in the books of Castaneda. If we compare the eastern directions of yoga, Tonal is a separate self. It is only an image to which we constantly turn, comparing it with others. Everything that you know and assume, feel, and can describe is the tonal. Don Juan compared the tonal to a dining table and the objects on it. So our life is like a table, and everything that happens in it are the various objects on this table: thoughts, experiences, images, physical body, knowledge, and skills are the tonal. Items can change places, disappear, or be destroyed, as well as new ones can appear. Just like in our life, people, things, and events come and go. We're learning something new, training, or at our own will we can destroy our body. But among the shamans of ancient Mexico, tonal had a special meaning. They strengthened it with intention. Seeing every movement of the body, every word in conversation, and realizing their actions to the maximum, they were flawless in everything. When Castaneda asked Don Juan about impeccability, Don Juan repeatedly explained that it was his controlled folly, and everything that we as people do is controlled folly. Ordinary people do not realize that any deeds in their life are controlled folly, since at the end of life everything has one ending: death. Against the background of death, any of your actions are absolute controlled folly. But sorcerers deliberately cultivate an awareness of imminent death and call all their actions a controlled folly. The term Nagwal is a more mysterious interpretation of Don Juan, because it is outside the table, outside the description of the world and ideas. It is not manifested, it has no beginning and no end. Stopping the internal dialogue is an attempt to consciously perceive the Nagwal. When thoughts subside, the fixators of consciousness stop working and the Assemblish Point turns into movement. At this point, you may feel discomfort or euphoria. If the attachments are strong, and these are your beliefs, blocks in your body, hitches to specific, then you will experience fear and anxiety. If your consciousness is clean, your body is healthy, a meeting with the Nagwal will bring new experiences and concrete knowledge. The Nagwal is where the force lives, Don Juan said, and each sorcerer must cleanse his island of tonal in order to be ready to meet the Nagwal. They devoted a lot of time to strengthening their tonal, and if they were not ready, then a meeting with the Nagwal could be fatal. A warrior sorcerer is a flawless hunter who hunts for power. He is not intoxicated or mad. He has neither the time nor the desire to achieve anything by deception, to lie to himself, or to commit wrong actions. The stakes are too high. The stakes are his life, immaculate and free from excesses, which he has so long strengthened and improved. He is not going to throw it away by making some stupid miscalculation or mistaking one for the other. Carlos Castaneda. According to the teachings of yoga, the Nagwal's comprehension is very similar to self-awareness in the state of samadhi, when the ego structure ceases to be solid and dissolves into something larger, indescribable. This is the result of deep meditation, which is the not doing of thoughts and mind. There are 8 steps in yoga, and the last is the attainment of the state of samadhi, or samadhi, as it is called in different parts of India. When the separate self dissolves in the ocean of cosmic consciousness and the drop becomes an ocean. When personal interests come into total resonance with the outside world. The essence of self-awareness in samadhi is liberation from all concepts of the mind, attachments, and the complete cessation of self-perception as the body, ego, thoughts, and emotions. One of the main practices of the Eastern directions is the disidentification from the body and everything familiar that we can call our personal self. We are afraid to let all of this go because we ourselves are this furniture. These pictures are all that we have. If we have the ability to play the violin, then we also become the violin. It is because of our self-identification with these things that we turn into them and into nothing else but them. Have you looked at it from this perspective? After all, you are the house with its shutters, bedroom, furniture that you have looked after for years. You are all of it. If you take all of these things away, then you become no thing. Jeda Krishnamurti. Vadim Zeland, author of the famous bestseller Reality Transurfing, described a certain space of options as an infinite number of lines and variants of events that can be reached consciously. The lifeline of each person can be adjusted and can be directed anywhere, at any event from the endless space of options. We see the similarity of terms and concepts from the books of Vadim Zeland and Carlos Castaneda. For example, the terms intent and the power of intent, these terms are in great focus in the books of both authors. Many of the techniques and practices in the books of Castaneda and Zeland are designed to master the power of intent, and it's by no means just goal, desire, or lust. The intention of the sorcerers of ancient Mexico is broadcast right now in this movie. It went through the books of Zeland, Victor Pelevin, and many other writers and creators of thematic movies. Think for a moment, how strong was Don Juan's intent, who taught Carlos his sorcery? It doesn't even matter if he was a real character or if he was made up by Castaneda. His intent worked perfectly and influenced so many people. In reality transurfing, there are two basic concepts: external intent and internal intent. If we compare them with the tonal and Nagwal, according to Castaneda, we will see an interesting similarity. The tonal forms the internal intention, and the Nagwal forms the external intention. Most of the techniques in Castaneda's sorcery were aimed at strengthening tonal, the personal power of the sorcerer, who would eventually control the extreme power of this world, the Nagwal. The fact is that each person has opportunities to influence this world, one of which is an internal intention, personal desires, ambitions, and will. If the inner intention is weak, not manageable, then external events will happen by themselves. Such people can be easily noticed. They do not have the will, the very power that was carefully trained by the sorcerers of Castaneda. And the will does not occur in a weak physical body and an uncontrolled mind. There is a special force within us, which warriors call will. It is not a thought, not an object, not a desire. Will is what makes the warrior sorcerer win when his mind tells him that he is defeated. Will is what makes him invulnerable. Will is what allows a shaman to walk through a wall, through space, into infinity. Carlos Castaneda. Look at the people who have achieved success. They were able to influence the world with their will. Their intention is unyielding and goes through time and circumstances. Not all successful people had the perfect body, but everyone had the willpower. The same inner power that works on top of our minds and expectations. The good news is that willpower can be trained, which will result in the birth of the power of intent. Everyone can do this. It is enough to study the biography of successful people who from poverty became influential. Will is the power that can move your assemblage point into a new position and fix it there. This happens when you do the same unusual action every morning. You develop a new skill that affects global events in your life. It can be 30 minutes of learning a foreign language. By repeating this process, you open up a new world. Great teachers of all times and nations spoke about one thing: interpreting the presence of this power in their own way. Yogis who reached the state of samadhi stopped the aging process, thought they could control the natural forces, comprehending eternal bliss in samadhi. They mastered the 8 basic siddhas, superpowers that arose during perfect yogic practice. There are 8 main siddhas of yoga. Anima, the ability to become small, like an atom. Mahima, the ability to become infinitely large. Laghima, extra lightness, levitation. Prapti, ability to expand, omnipresence. Prakamya, fulfillment of desires. Ashitwa, management, natural forces. Ishitwa, superiority over nature. Ikama avasaitva, full satisfaction. Siddhis are a byproduct of perfect yogic practice, part of a person's self-consciousness on the way to samadhi. But there are special techniques for developing one or the other ability, as well as the techniques of Castaneda sorcerers, which allow you to develop superpowers similar to the siddhas of yogis. For example, lucid dreams, when a practitioner understands that he is in a dream and can take information from there, learn, fly, and create any reality. Dream travel produces a dreaming body, a double, which is an energetic extension of the physical body. A prerequisite for this is the presence of a large amount of energy in the body and a high concentration of attention. Naturally, in a weakened physical body, there is not enough energy to create an energetic double. The energy of most people is strongly conditioned by everyday affairs, society, and the ego take all the vitality, and nothing remains for the siddhi. We must be impeccable in our actions and thoughts in order to release the right amount of energy, and only then we will be able to create new worlds and manage reality. Samadhi. The course of a warrior's fate is unchanged. The defiance is how far will he go by the narrow road, and how impeccable will he be within these unbreakable borders. Carlos Castaneda. For the average person, these are just tales of power, but they are the ones that make it possible to go beyond your limited mind, to move the assemblish point from its usual position to a new reality. All the achievements of humanity were once someone's fantasy, and all our daring fantasies come from the Nagwal, the unconscious, the cosmic absolute. I am already given to power that rules my fate, and I cling to nothing, so I will have nothing to defend. I have no thoughts, so I will see. I fear nothing, so I will remember myself. Detached and at ease, I will dart past the eagle to be free. Carlos